We love bringing you these conversations on our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed or liked or shared, you are late. Please do so now. That's OB-GYN Chats. And we always give you the important information that you need to know. With the experts themselves, we are joined by Dr. David Emvula. Thank you once more, Doc. How are you?
Thank you very much, Ilke, for having me. How are you?
Great. The year is almost done. It's almost over.
Yes, we are already
flying by.
Yeah, the end of the year.
It is. It is.
Unbelievable.
So if you don't know where they're situated at, right here at Lady Bohamba Demonstrio Suites, and you have a warm, welcoming reception area. Thank you always, Doc.
Most welcome.
This is an important discussion. It's about menstrual cycles, but this time, nutrition added to it. Let's start with the basics. What is menstrual cycle, and what are those very, very bad times of the month for a woman?
So a menstrual cycle can be defined simply. It's a physiological process that happens in a woman of a reproductive age, and that is it starts from the phase known as menarche, which is your first day of the first menstruation that you have, and then it ends with the phase known as menopause, which is the last day of the last menstruation that you'll have. So it is a phase of a woman's lifespan, and it's for one purpose, is to reproduce. And part of the reproduction, it happens once a month, because you have an egg that develops for about 28 to up to 35 days in every woman's cycle. That's so that egg develops in that period, and above about 14 days after it starts developing, which is usually 14 days from the first day of your last previous menstruation, a process known as ovulation happens. And then with an ovulation, that is known as also a fertile period, because the egg is released into the female genital tract, which is usually the fallopian tube. And if there is an exposure to sperm within at least about 12 to 24 hours, then there is a chance of fertilization. And any period above that, then the chance of fertilization is very low. And then if there is no fertilization, meaning that there's no pregnancy, what we know is that 14 days, exactly 14 days after ovulation, in the absence of any pregnancy, the woman will menstruate, because then the body tells you that there's no period. The body must prepare for another cycle, which to reproduce. And then the process goes on until all the eggs are finished, and then that is now what we know as menopause.
Okay.
Yes.
Very detailed description of menstrual cycles. So it's that time of the month where we say some women are moody, some women don't want to be social. But when that happens, Doc, we never actually focus on nutrition and what we consume that makes an impact on our menstrual cycles. Maybe let's place nutrition in perspective.
Yes, indeed. Nutrition does play a major factor in terms of women's health, menstruation cycle, and hormonal changes. Because what brings about this menstruation cycle is hormonal changes. So what we know is that malnutrition has an effect on the menstruation cycle. And when we speak about malnutrition, we always think that it is people that are starving. It's not about starving. Malnutrition is actually classified into undernutrition, which is meaning that you are not getting enough food, and then overnutrition. And overnutrition is probably the most known, which is always why women run, exercise. They don't want to maintain a healthy balance, weight, and also obesity, which you always know. So the aim is that in order to have a healthy, normal menstruation cycle, a woman must have what is known as a healthy nutritional status. And in clinical settings, we assess the nutritional status based on the body mass index, which is a quotient of the weight and the height. And if your body mass index is low, which is then usually we speak that it is less than 18 body mass index kg per meter squared, that is known as undernutrition. And what we see is that what it means is that your body might be lacking sufficient nutrition. And with a lack of sufficient nutrition, and in worst case scenarios, there's women that even have conditions that can, such as anorexia nervosa, where they don't eat enough. And this, you can either have irregular menstruation in that group of patients, and in some cases, some patients actually even have absence of menstruation completely.
Wow.
If you are too overweight. And the opposite is also true, that if your body mass index is more than 25, it can either be overweight, and then it can also reach up to obesity. And then in that age group also, that is also found that when you have too much of your body mass index, equally we see the same symptoms, but in those patients we don't really see a lot of absent menstruation. We see a lot of irregular menstruation cycle, and also lead to even risk of developing conditions such as endometrial hyperplasia, which can even lead to endometrial cancer.
Wow.
So nutrition does have a role to play, and it is important that women maintain a healthy nutritional status when it comes to their menstrual health.
So what are the do's and don'ts, Doc? I know you're not a specialized dietitian, but I mean, just for free consultation, what are those things that we should look out for, the things that we should be getting in, and maybe the things that we shouldn't, to make the menstrual cycle not as painful?
Yes. Perhaps when we speak about nutrition, to break it down, I think if we go to basic life science, there is what we call nutrition can either be broken into two arms. One is macronutrition, and the other one is micronutrients. When you speak about macronutrients, the most one that is known, and I'm sure most women knows about, is they always speak about carbs. I don't want to eat carbs. It's carbohydrates. And you know, with carbohydrates, it's related to sugar. And with sugar, we know excess sugar leads to excess fat, meaning that once your body has reached a certain threshold of what you need for the sugar, the rest gets changed into fat, and you can actually increase fat. And then with fat, it does lead to excess fat is converted within a woman's body to a hormone known as estrogen, which we found, and estrogen does have a role to play into menstruation. So that's how it can lead to disturbance in a woman. So carbs do have a role to play. And also women that take a lot of carbs, for example, they are found to have this premenstrual syndrome, such as emotional disturbance and all other symptoms. The other one is, the other macro is fats. And when we speak about fats can also be classified into saturated fat, and saturated fat is usually fats from animals such as butter, cheese. And we know that saturated fat is not healthy, and we do not recommend this. Those patients that take saturated fat are at risk of also PMS or premenstrual syndrome, and it can also then lead to excess estrogen, and then subsequently lead to all these other abnormal bleedings and menstrual disturbance. So what we are advocating when it comes to fat, we advocate for such unsaturated fat, and an unsaturated fat is fat that is delivered from fish, or sunflower oil and olive oil, and those are found to be healthy, and in actual fact they actually found to reduce even symptoms related to menstruation cycles, such as cramps, because they are having anti-inflammatory. And then proteins mainly focus on the buildings, and with protein, only if you are eating excess of them, they can also lead to excess fat, and then subsequently they can be converted. So those are the mains. Then there is what we call now the micronutrients. And one of the micronutrients that are important when it comes to menstruation is iron. And due to the loss of blood during the menstruation cycle, women of the reproductive age are vulnerable to developing iron deficiency anemia because of loss. And with iron deficiency anemia, they are at risk of predisposing them to even heart conditions. They get fatigue and all the other symptoms. So it is highly advised that the women do not lose too much blood, and if they are losing too much blood, they must be consulting to find what is the problem so that they can be treated, because it can lead to other ones. The other ones, such as magnesium, vitamin B6 and B12, calcium, these are all some of the important nutrients, micronutrients, that have a role to play in menstruation, such as reducing the symptoms, cramps, and also related to the premenstrual syndrome, or what is known as the PMS. So it is important that when women look at their diet, they try to find a balance in terms of all these macro and micro in order to have a healthy menstrual cycle.
Very interesting to know. Somebody once said, you know what, a diet doesn't have to be expensive. You just need to get the right things in the shopping cart.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, but very much indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, so Doc, I mean, it's, you know, giving these small little pieces of advice that can change your every once a month cycle, which is great. Let's finally ask the question about hydration. I know nutrition is there in terms of the food, but let's speak about, you know, staying hydrated.
Yes, indeed. Hydration does play a role because when you lose blood, in basic human physiology, there is a terminology known as homeostasis. And homeostasis, in simple terms, it just means that you need to maintain a balance. In terms of physiology, our body are made in such a way that there should not be excess too much fluid in the body, and there should not be less. And this is actually important, especially because women lose blood every month. There is always a reduction in there. Then it now depends on how much is a woman losing. So that is why a woman who loses a lot of blood, they can actually even become very, very weak to a point where they even may require admission, or we may even need to replace their blood, getting blood transfusion. So it is highly advised that women should be hydrating themselves, especially when they are on their menstruation cycle. And equally so, some studies have shown that women that keep rehydrated, they even experience less PMS symptoms, cramps, and all these emotional distress. So it does have a role to play, and it's highly encouraged that during the period of menstruation cycle, they should be drinking water.
Great. Thank you so much, Doc. We appreciate all the advice, and hopefully those that are watching will, apply the free consultation.
Yes.
Any final remarks, Doc?
Yeah, final remarks perhaps is it is highly important that there is many diets that are available. For example, diets such as Mediterranean, which is focusing on eating a lot of fruits, vegetables, and we really encourage that women of the reproductive age must be eating vegetables, especially the green leafy vegetables such as spinach, cabbage, lettuce. They have a lot of iron. And then when it comes to animal, they should be eating meat such as liver, chicken liver, any other liver. They are very high good content of iron, and especially iron is very important. Then there's also other diets such as the Western diet. We know that the Western diet has a lot of this processed. They have a lot of fat and animal fat. And then I think it is highly important that when a woman is choosing their diet, they need to look at what does it contain and how does it affect their body, and try to maintain a healthy body mass index. As we already highlighted or alluded to, either low or over is not good, but a healthy one is healthy, and or a normal BMI is what we should be advocating for. And keeping exercises also plays a role in terms of even relieving. And when they do have too much excessive bleeding, and that is perhaps one of the challenges, to know what is normal and what is not abnormal. And I think it chats with colleagues and friends and family members if you really think that you are bleeding too much. But in simple terms is that women should not be changing pads 4 to 5 times in a day when you are on your menstruation. And then once you reach that point, perhaps you might seek help,
excessive.
because
too much.
It may mean that there is a reason to why you are bleeding too much. As we already said, that bleeding too much is not healthy at all.
All right. Doc, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. Let's strike the balance. So the end of the month, or whatever time of the month it is, the whole family can be happy.
Yes, most indeed, because there's those emotional changes, all that.
There are.
And with a healthy, balanced diet, it has been found that those emotional signs, symptoms are less, mood changes, and even the cramps which the patients experience, and then meaning less tablets and all that.
Yes.
So it's highly advised that diet does play a role in the menstruation cycle.
You heard it from the doc, not me, but also as a female as well. You know what females go through. Thank you so much, Doc, once again. There you have it, OB-GYN Chats. If you have experienced any of that, if you have maybe some remedies that have been working for you, drop it down in the chat box. Let's engage, let's have the comments, and next month we'll be back with another discussion. Thanks.